Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mulligans and Milkshakes podcast presented by the Crimson Crossover Podcast Network. I'm your host Christian Sykes, joined as always by Charles Branch and Matthew Travis. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. It's been a great week of golf, great week of watching golf, and excited for another episode.
Yeah, it felt like a really busy Thursday of golf, just Alabama related, which I know we'll get in here to a little bit. But we all, or at least some of us, are continuing to try to play golf. I know I played Friday, but Matthew, you had a tournament this weekend. How'd that go for you?
Went well. Yeah, it was a long weekend. Thursday I was at the Zurich Classic over in New Orleans, wearing the shirt right now. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm a member at a course here in Lake Charles, and it's called Graywood Country Club, and we had our member guests. So 9-hole match Friday, then a putting contest, trackman contest, and chipping contest close to the hole. After it got dark, they had lights and everything. It was pretty neat. And then two 9-hole matches Saturday, two 9-hole matches on Sunday. So really long week. You guys saw the video. I'll send you the video, a little edited, that we can put on social. But my final match came down to the last hole. We were tied at it came out to, so we were tied at 4-4, and if you win a match you get an extra point, so possibility of 10 points. Came down to 4-4. I was playing pretty well. I think I had an eagle on the 15th hole. I put it to 2 feet short, and I almost had an albatross, which would have been insane, but it was a par 5 15th that I put to 2 feet from 215 out. The wind this weekend, for those who watch the Zurich, you realize the wind this weekend in the entire state was unbelievable. And I hit the ball so high that it is just brutal. I remember one hole, the 11th hole, it is impossible. I am not making this up. I had 100 out, 102 yards from the pin, and I hit an 8-iron. My 8-iron goes 160 yards, and I was 10 feet short. The wind was absolutely absurd. I hit a 4-iron with the wind behind us. My 4-iron is my 200 club. It was a par 4, water on the left, bunker on the right, so you kind of have to keep it straight. I had a 4-iron, 260 yards because the wind was behind us, and it was just absurd. So dealing with that Friday was a little rough. We lost 7-3 in our first match, but Saturday we won 6-4, 6-4, and then Sunday, not a great morning, and then came down to the last hole. From 200 out, I put it to 30, 35 feet or so, and made the putt for the win. And it was crazy because that kept our opponents from winning the flight. And because of it, another guy who was my partner in a previous tournament, they won the flight. So I went up to him. They won an extra 250 because I made the putt. Showed him the video, and I was like, "This putt won you an extra 250. I'm not a greedy person. I'll only take $50 of it, and I'll be nice." And then they went and won the shootout, which the shootout, it's 8 people. There are 8 flights. The winner of each flight, they get separated into two groups of 4 teams, and they play each hole, and the low score combined. So the tournament is best ball, and then the shootout is combined score. So if, say, Christian and I were playing together, he makes a 6, I makes a 4, you have a 10 on that hole, the worst score gets eliminated, and you play until there are 2 teams left, and they play the last hole, and obviously the winner gets good amount of money. And they went and won the shootout, so I went up to him again and said, well, now it's going to be a little more than 50. But it was a great weekend. I had a lot of fun. That was my first time playing in member guests. I used to work at 2 separate courses in Charlotte, and I'd worked a bunch of member guests, so I'd always looked forward to playing in it, and definitely lived up to the hype. It was late night Friday because we teed off at 4:30, and then they had all the contests and everything. And then I had to wake up Sunday morning for a 9 o'clock shotgun, and then do it again or on Saturday morning, then do it again on Sunday. So a lot of golf, but I had a lot of fun, and I think I'll be taking a couple days off here.
So as one, we did see the putt being a 30-footer, and you had talked about, you'd had probably 28 putts on Sunday. I'm a guy who's typically two putting, hopefully. I mean, there's definitely a lot of three putts that get in there too. But when I played Friday, I probably had 36 putts total. And I would say the total amount of feet I made over those 18 holes, probably in the 30 to 40 range, having a lot of putts that tapping in or 1 or 2 footer. For someone like you, as just someone who's getting to scratch or close to scratch, like how many feet of putts do you feel like you're making in a typical 18-hole round?
So we were talking about this a little earlier. Right off the bat, I mean, obviously the 30-footer, I had a 2-footer for eagle, so there's 32 feet and 2 putts right there. But a little context, in the morning, I was keeping our team in it because I was making everything inside 12 feet that I looked at. And our opponent walked up to me. I'm the sports director for the TV station. And so we have an anchor that's been there forever. Like, people grew up watching her and have families now and they still watch her. And he said he's gonna have to call her and tell her I'm playing too much golf because I'm making just every putt I was looking at. But like you said, I had 28 putts. It was one of my better putting days I've had in a while. Really a good weekend as a whole putting, but 28 putts, so that's 10 2 putts, 8 1 putts. I'd say the 10 2 putts that I made, it was probably within 4 feet. So that's 40 feet right there of putts with 10 and 10. And then the 30-footer, so that's 11 holes. So we're already at 70 right there. The 2-footer, so we're at 72 through 12. I'd probably say the others were probably 6 to 15 feet. We'll say an average of 10. So what is that? 6 times 10, that's another 60. So that'd be 132 in a rough estimate. So probably yesterday was abnormal. It was an outlier, but definitely average is probably just over 100 because I can be somewhat consistent from 10 feet to 15 feet range. I'll make a couple of those around, but yesterday it felt like or Sunday it felt like I was making everything I looked at. So that was kind of an outlier, but yeah, rough estimate probably 130 feet.
Just
Uh,
kind of it's something that I've been thinking of. Look, it's great. When I'm on the green, I'm probably, a good 20, 30 feet away, and I'm trying to get it within that 2, 3 foot circle around the hole, so that I can, if I'm not getting a green in regulation, I'm at least getting a bogey. I'm not making it worse and getting a double or triple or something like that. And I feel like that's probably one of the next steps in my golf game is, how do I make more 10-footers? How do I, make more 15-footers? And once you get to 20 or 30, there's obviously just, rolling it well and having good form and just being able to
For
read
sure.
means. But, that ability to make a 10-footer and make more of them consistently obviously changes your golf score a lot quicker, where you're probably shedding 3 or 4 strokes than a typical round right now, because you're not having to make that tap in from a foot or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was 1 or 2 under on the back yesterday. I didn't put it in again because it's best ball, so it was just kind of on the scorecard, and it won't affect my handicap, unfortunately. But yeah, I think it was 1 or 2 under off the top of my head because had the eagle and 2 birdies, and I think yeah, I had 1 bogey. I had 2 bogeys, so yeah, I was 2 under on the back in my second match yesterday. It was a good day, and the wind was not as bad yesterday. It was still pretty brutal, but I think after 27 holes, I was able to figure it out a little bit.
So we were talking, and this will come out with you guys will see this shortly with Canon, about just the importance of starting backwards, essentially starting from the green, putting, chipping. Like I said, you guys will see this coming up shortly, but I think that's such a good point, specifically because you look at that video, like with you made a 30-foot putt. And when I played, last week, I the only thing preventing me from shooting in the 80s was my short game, because I think I've done kind of like the reverse of, again, what Cannon said, which is I've made sure that I can hit the ball well off the tee. I've been working on my irons a lot, and at times my short game kind of falters, not necessarily putting, but the chipping aspect. And so I think that, that video kind of shows kind of the importance of, getting out on the greens, getting out and just chipping and being able to, I guess, minimize, or limit damage when it comes to playing.
For sure. If you're not able to hit the green, it's all about not maybe getting up and down, but minimizing those strokes, getting up and two putting. And if you miss a green and you get up and two putt, that's a bogey 10 times out of 10. Obviously, if it's a par 5, it can be a par depending on where you're at around the green. But yeah, it's all my pride and joy in my golf game has been my short game forever. That's just kind of how it was. And I let it slip for a little while because my driver was struggling and I had to work on that. And then I got a new driver and I really had to hone it in to make it feel like buying a new driver was worth it. But I think that's why I'm where I'm at in golf, which is a 3 handicap. And I'm trying to get that down to, like you said, scratch, which my goal, I put it out on Twitter the other day. I shot a 73 on Wednesday. My goal, I'm 23 right now. I turned 24 in June. My goal is to be scratched by when I turn 25, which is June 27th, 2025. So we'll see how that goes. But I think that's why I am where I am, is because I worked religiously on my chipping and my putting. And for a while, over the summer or over the fall, excuse me, I let my putting slip a little bit because I got too aggressive. I was trying to make everything I was looking at. And I think what's helped me a lot is I worked a lot on just two putting. No matter where I am on the green, if I'm 100 feet, if I'm 40 feet, if I'm 30 feet, just two putting. If I don't make the putt, make sure it's within 3 feet so I have an easy tap in for par, bogey, birdie, whatever it might be. And I think truly that's helped a lot. Obviously, the putt, that the video is an outlier because I knew that was to win the match for positioning in the flight. But it's truly just all about two putting and not putting yourself in a position where you were too aggressive, you blew it past the hole by 10 feet, and now all of a sudden you have a 3 putt because you didn't set yourself up when you only had 40 feet. But I'm going on a tangent here, but truly, everyone says that short game is the most important part of your game. And if you can get it in your mind just to two putt and not set yourself up for failure, the scores will improve. And Canon talked a little bit about that as well.
So, I think this is a great segue. And Charles, let's talk about your round on Friday. You said you played on Friday. I don't want to forget about you. How did your round go? How did you shoot?
Yeah, it's fine. I 18 over again. So I started out really, really well. The course I was playing, like after 4 holes, I could typically be at a 7 or 8 over, and I was 4 over with 2 3 putts. But the other 2 holes I did have 1 putt on where I was just able to put the ball close, being around the green. So I was hitting the ball well. I was hitting, I didn't feel like I was losing like a lot of super fades or slices or anything like that. So that's obviously very good. But just continuing to try to improve. It's also a course where a lot of elevation changes, even though maybe slight, ball below your feet, ball above your feet. So just trying to figure out those shots too, as far as how I need to be positioned, choking up or choking down the club, swing path, all that. But overall, it was a good walk, not spoiled. So I'll take that every Friday.
I didn't get to play this weekend. I had Alex Brim's wedding on Saturday. And then yesterday I was like, because I had to drive 4 hours to Woodstock, Georgia, 4 hours back Saturday night, because I didn't want to have to pay for a hotel. So Sunday I was
all
like,
to see him play a fiddle, huh?
Yeah. I went to the wedding. I went and did the dinner and all of that, but I didn't stay for like any of the dancing or anything. So I actually left right after he played the fiddle. So that was really cool. him, and congratulations to Colette and Alex, obviously. But I'm hoping maybe next weekend I'll get to go play. Sam's again out of town until Friday, and then she has some music festival in Charlotte that she's doing until Sunday. So like I have no plans for the rest of the week.
That's golfing time right there.
It is, yeah, it is. So let's segue a little bit into the Canon interview. We kind of already teased it a little bit. I again want to thank Canon for coming on and talking to us following the SEC tournament, which for those of you guys who didn't listen to last week's episode, we said going into it that if they make the match play, that like that's good. They made the match play in the SEC tournament, and then they came up, a hole or two short of beating Auburn, who I think ended up winning the whole thing. So really proud of the guys and how they came together this year, and they should probably, I think Cannon said they're looking at either Purdue, Chapel Hill, or LSU as far as the sites for the NCAA tournament. So best of luck to those guys, and we'll hopefully have them on either following the season or maybe leading up into the NCAA tournament again, just so people can get a recap. So here's the Canon interview, and we'll chat after that's up. So thanks.
Yeah, so we're joined by Alabama grad student and Alabama golfer Canon Claycomb, who is coming off a week at the SEC tournament. They're getting ready for the NCAA tournament here in a couple weeks. So, Canon, we appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
So this is now your 5th year playing golf at Alabama. Crazy enough, you're entering what is going to be your final tournament, the NCAA tournament coming up in a couple weeks. Just kind of talk about your experience being an Alabama student athlete, playing on the Alabama golf team, and kind of what comes with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been really cool. Like I was telling you guys earlier, I'm not from Alabama, so didn't grow up an Alabama fan. I came here for the LSU Alabama game when the final score was like 10-3, I think. And the week before, I'd been to Vanderbilt, and Vandy was playing MTSU in football. That was my recruiting visit. And I remember the stadium being more blue than it was black and gold. And then I came here to the Alabama LSU game, and I was like, I have to go to school here. Like, there's no choice, which was a great choice. I think the first 2 years I was here, it was a lot of golf. And I kind of just thought I was a golfer that played at Alabama, and like football and basketball and baseball kind of ran the school. And then, we started getting better each year that I was here. And when I saw like the people buying in and what it actually like meant to, play at Alabama and how people reacted to athletes at Alabama, it was really cool. That's kind of when I started tweeting a little more, like trying to be more active on Twitter. I really wanted to like talk to fans and be engaged in fan conversation around Alabama, because the people are so passionate and they love the university. And as a golfer, like we're not getting paid 6 figures to come play golf here. Like, we're coming to play here because we want to play at Alabama, and we think that Alabama is a really cool place. And the last 2.5 years of my time here at Alabama, I've really kind of bought into that whole belief system. And I think it's been really cool. I think like, people have, helped me out and, encouraged me and, have wanted me to stay. Like, I was going to leave last year, turn pro, and just not finish my undergrad here at Alabama, or I was going to do it on the road while I was playing professionally. But I think a lot of people kind of like pushed me to stay and, wanted me to be here in Tuscaloosa for another year. And that was a huge part of my decision to not turn pro last year. So it's been really special to be, a member of an Alabama athletic program, and especially the golf team. I think people here love golf, and even in class or walking around campus, you see people wearing the swinging elephant stuff. And, sometimes they don't know you're on the golf team, but you kind of just look at them, you're like, they buy our stuff, which is cool.
I will say, as a person that does a lot of the not a lot, but I help out with like the athletic apparel, like the NIL. Sometimes I wish we could get our hands on the swinging elephant, because like I could he could do so much with it, but Coach Sewell obviously wants to keep that specifically for the boosters, which I respect so much because it's one of the best logos I think that Alabama has.
Yeah, it's really good. And I think too, like you're starting to see it more and more across different sports, but also different schools. Like I think we have the right to say we started the swinging elephant and swinging whatever mascot your team is. But even baseball now, like they're selling those pullovers and shirts with the elephant with the baseball bat. Like it's cool to just, I think we started that, and I think we're more than happy to share it with everybody here at Alabama. So it's cool to kind of see it taking off a little bit.
So
So,
Cannon,
sorry,
you
go ahead.
mentioned the PGA Tour U there, and the decision kind of turning pro. We've seen Ludwig obviously excel through the PGA Tour U. Can you kind of just, for those who don't know what that is, can you talk a little bit about what that is and how Ludwig is now finished third at the Masters, and he's having all this success, and you had the opportunity to also turn pro should you have made that decision, but can you kind of talk a little bit about that, your experience with it as well?
Yeah, so PGA Tour U is a program that the PGA Tour implemented, and the idea was to keep these players in college a little longer, because we saw a lot of kids turning pro like sophomore, beginning of junior year, like Davis Riley left before he graduated, stuff like that. And so what it is it's a point system from your junior and senior year of college events only. So it is built to make the player play as many college events as he can. So they're not sitting out, they're not, playing mini tour events while the college season's going on. And then the top 25 in the rankings get either PGA Tour, Corn Ferry, or what they're calling the Americas Tour now, which was the Latin American Tour and the Canadian Tour before then. All those tours are run by the PGA Tour. I'm 15th on the rankings right now, so that would put me in Canada for next year or this summer actually. But it's just a good little program to have a couple starts somewhere coming out of college as a pro. And Ludwig was number 1 on PGA Tour U last year, so he got full season of PGA Tour status through that. And even if he didn't, he would have been on the PGA Tour. Like he was one of the best players I've ever played with. And like just a short little story, I played with him at the regional at Oklahoma last year when we won at Oklahoma, and I played with him the first 2 rounds. He didn't make a bogey for 36 holes, and on the 31st hole I was playing with him, I looked at Sewell and I was like, this guy's gonna play on the Ryder Cup team. Like he's that good. And Sewell was like, yeah, I think you're right. I think he might play on the Ryder Cup team. And a couple months later, he played on the Ryder Cup team, won a couple points, and Europe won the cup. So it's cool. Like that's kind of the state of college golf right now, though, is like these guys are so good. And I don't know if it's just being amplified more now or if these guys are just getting even better. But I mean, you have Nick Dunlap winning as an amateur, Ludwig making a Ryder Cup team, winning the RSM right out of college. Gordon has his PGA Tour card. Like all these guys are just so good now, and it's really fun to be a part of.
And then on top of that, you have a 15-year-old making the top 25 in
Yeah,
Corn Ferry.
exactly. Like it's crazy.
So would you say that this season for you has been successful as far as your last season at Alabama? Is it kind of have you accomplished kind of what you expected to accomplish coming into this season?
Yeah, I think it's been successful. I think, I was kind of hoping for a little more out of it maybe, but I think, we've had a lot of distractions this semester, and I think we've had a lot of noise around the program that wasn't, about us necessarily, and that's not Nick's fault. Like he won on the PGA Tour, we just had to deal with it. But I think I could have played a little better, but I think you're also as an athlete like very hard on yourself. Like I finished top 15 5 times this season, had 2 top 10s. I finished second and third. So I think if you're asking me, I probably would have wanted to have a win or played a little bit better. But I think if you're asking someone that's looking at me from the outside, I'd say it was a pretty successful season so far.
Well, and I'll say this, for all the talk of Nick leaving, the fact that I don't know if the rankings update after the SEC champion or SEC tournament, the fact that you guys were still 9th in the nation without the US amateur shows you just the type of talent that you guys had this season. And 2, just the team, chemistry that you guys had. Losing, I mean, is it okay if I say Nick was your best golfer? Because I don't know.
No,
I
I
don't
think
know.
I don't think anybody disputes that fact. Like,
Okay.
Nick was our best player by far.
I didn't want to be disrespectful to any of you
No,
guys.
no.
But losing Nick for good reason, and then being able to still be top 10, and probably going to be what I think the projections have you guys as like a 2 seed, I think right now in a regional. Just shows you just the kind of program that Alabama has, and just the talent that, even despite Nick, that you guys have. So I personally would say it's been a successful season for you guys.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a lot of fun too. Like, with Nick leaving, it was weird because like we all knew after the second round when he shot 61 or whatever, we were like, this kid's gonna freaking win this tournament. Like, this is gonna suck, but it's gonna be so sick at the same time. And as like a guy who is the quote unquote leader of the team, like, we have old guys that you guys were talking about earlier, like Pondy, and we brought in a transfer from Auburn, Austin Coggin, who's a senior, and then JP Cave is a senior as well. And we just all kind of sat down and we were like, dude, we're still like such a good golf team. Like, people think that we're not anymore, and it's not fair because we are a really good golf team, but B, it's such a great place to be in. And like, watching the basketball team this year, like, I felt actually we have a lot of parallels with them, where it was that everybody was talking about the center we lost and how you can't win with 5 guards or 3 guards and 2 forwards. Like, you can win with whatever you have. It's just a matter of you going out and actually trying to win. And the thing we've done this spring is going out and trying to win every time. And like, we're proud for Nick. We're happy for Nick. We miss Nick a lot, like you were saying, but it's just a harsh reality. Like, we had to kind of turn the page pretty quickly, and I think we did a really good job of that.
So talk about that. This is the last question I have on the Nick thing. Talk about that viral moment where you guys are in the team bus and you're videotaping and he makes that putt. What's going through your mind? What's like your immediate reaction in that moment when I think everyone knew that he was going to make that putt, but like, what was your thought as you're sitting there videotaping that, and then just the team kind of vibes following that?
Yeah, I mean, it was just like pure jubilation, like joy, happiness. It was crazy. I mean, I said something on Twitter, like, when he was teeing off, it was like, I said something like 1 hole for the rest of your life. And that's like really how we all felt. Like, like, we see him every day. Like, I still talk to him. I talked to him yesterday, but it was like, you watch this kid who, like, his freshman year was not great by any standards. Like, the fall of his freshman year was kind of rough. And then he kind of flipped a switch over Christmas break and went to work like really hard. And you just saw this whole like progression to that point. And then when the point gets there, it's like he did it. And there was like this huge, I don't want to say relief, but it was like we saw it happen right in front of our eyes. And that was like a really cool moment, I think, for all of us. And like, I mean, too, we saw his life change drastically in 1 second. Like, that putt goes in, and now he is a full-fledged member of the PGA Tour for 3 years. He gets into every major, maybe not the British Open, but he's probably going to get in the British Open. He gets to play the Players. He gets to play all the elevated events. Like, that is what I told him was like, this is why you come to Alabama. Like, you come to Alabama to get better. You play for Alabama, and then you turn pro, and you try and play on the PGA Tour. And what he did was he came to Alabama, and he just did it 2.5 years faster than everybody else usually does it. And so that was like the cool moment where we could sit back and be like, hey, man, you did it. Like, now go get what's yours, and we'll be here whenever you want to come back.
Yeah, that final round was almost like an infomercial just for the University of Alabama and Alabama
Yeah.
golf. Justin Thomas in the final group with him, Coach Saban getting on there. I know they interviewed Coach Sewell, on the while he was on the course too. I kind of wanted to ask some questions around junior golf. One of those questions being, we were talking about the Jerry Pate out at Birmingham earlier from this year, and y'all were teeing off from tee boxes that I didn't even know existed out there. So, as you're, getting better at golf and you're starting to hit the ball further, when did you know to start moving back in tees? Like if someone like me, my total yardage is probably 6,000 or 6,100. And I know y'all are playing tournaments where it's 7,000. When did you know I need to start moving back and challenging myself a little bit more?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it was more of like a progression of when you sign up for tournaments, they just put you kind of where you are, right? So it was like I played at this place called the Club at Old Stone in Kentucky growing up, and it's a really hard golf course. So I was always around 12 or 13 years old. I was probably playing 64, 6,500 yards. And then when you get like 13, you start playing AJGAs a little bit, and they kind of move back to like 65 to 6,700 yards. And so like I never really was like, I'm progressing each tee backwards. It was more like, this is the tournament yardage that I just played. I'm going to try and match it at my home course to the yardage I just played at for a tournament. But like, I mean, I think you should set like a score where if you're at the red tees, like the women's tees, quote unquote, like you break par, you move back, or you shoot par, you move back. And then like each time you do that, or you shoot your goal number, whatever that is, like you move back. Because I think like golf is a weird thing where it's like, if I were playing you in basketball, like there's no like advantage, like handicap wise or anything like that. So it's like in golf, I can play someone that's a 10 handicap and I give him 3 tees, and now I don't have to give him 2.5 shots every hole, and it's more of a match. And so I think a lot of people play too far back and take too many strokes. Whereas like they should just play the senior tees and take half of their handicap. Like I think that's more of a sport and it's more enjoyable. Like nobody wants to hit driver 5-iron. They want to hit driver 9-iron. Like it's just common, and that's how you make birdies. So like I think for me it was more so like I just played in tournaments. The tournaments set the yardage. I played the yardage, and then I'd go home and match that. And every time I moved back, it was just because I was playing in a tournament that moved farther back.
So for anybody who listens to this and is watching me playing on Friday, when I'm playing the junior tees, it's okay because Cannon said I could.
It is okay, yeah.
Speaking of just junior golf, I got two young guys that are really enjoying watching y'all, watching Nick, and just watching golf in general. What would you say to junior golfers, becoming teenagers right now, as far as, things that they should work on, or just mindset as far as going out there, maybe not worrying about score, but just trying to play as many holes as you can and just getting experience?
Well, I think playing as many holes as you can is a very important part of it. I think if you can, like how I was raised and grew up playing golf was like I went to the golf course after school. My parents dropped me off, and then they would pick me up at dark. So it was like I just did whatever I wanted to for 6 hours on the golf course, whether that was hit balls or chip or putt. Like I just went to work for 6 hours every day after school. And like that's how I learned how to get good. And I don't want to say I taught myself because I had a lot of help, but I was out there just kind of trying different things, figuring out what worked, what didn't work. And you just kind of get in the dirt and you have to do it. And you have to have a passion for it. Like I think a lot of what you see in junior golf a lot is these parents where their kid will shoot 76 and like the parents are disgusted. And it's like, if my parents were ever like that, I would have just quit. I wouldn't have wanted to play. Like I would have played basketball or baseball where I could hide behind 11 teammates. Like that's no fun. So I think you have to have a passion. And I think for parents, like you have to be supportive and realize that like most of the time when I see junior golf parents, like their kid would stomp their dad in golf if they played one-on-one. So like I always try and think about that. Like people who are saying things or parents who are saying things like they're not in the arena. They couldn't hit the shots. So I think that's a big part of it. And then learning how to play golf, like I think you should work backwards. So I think you should start at the green and work back to the tee. Like for junior golfers who are trying to become really good players, like there's a reason Nick won on the PGA Tour, and it's not because he drives it straight and he drives it 330 yards. He was able to putt it really well, and he was able to chip it really well for 4 days. And you don't shoot 61 hitting 9 irons to 3 feet every time. Like I'm sure if you rewatch that round, he made probably 5 or 6 putts that were over 15 feet, and it keeps a round going. It keeps momentum going. And I think the best way to learn golf is to learn how to putt first, chip second, hit irons third, and then hit drivers off the tee, because you're just working backwards, where if you can learn how to chip and putt, like, it negates a lot of troubles off the tee. And I think that gets kind of lost on kids. Like, they want to hit it far and they want to hit it hard, and that's cool. But anybody that hits it hard and hits it far, like, I would want to play every day of the week, because I know I can beat them around the greens.
You talking a lot about that, and I saw an interview you did last week. I believe it was with PGA Tour U. You were talking a lot about your mental game and how you really feel like that's improved this year, and how you kind of went from, you said you felt somewhat of an imposter syndrome earlier in the year, last year, and you kind of kicked that and realized you are one of the best golfers, not only on your team in the SEC, but in the country. Kind of talk about the mental game and kind of the strides you've taken to get to where you're at now and be 15th, like you mentioned, on the PGA Tour U.
Yeah, it's a lonely sport, and it's not very rewarding for most of the time. So it's a difficult place to be in. I think the imposter syndrome just came from being surrounded by such good golfers all the time in the SEC. Like, we play the hardest strength of schedule in the country, so we never had a tournament where you could kind of let off and beat some kids that played at mid majors. It was always like Texas, Oklahoma, Auburn, Vandy, places like that, and I think that wears on you a little bit. Like I said, it's lonely, and you're on an island out there by yourself. So I think a lot of what I was falling into was a trap where your golf score dictates what kind of person you are, and that's a dangerous game to play, because your golf score is your golf score. And I think if you ask around Tuscaloosa, I would be a pretty cool guy to hang out with a lot of the time, whether I shoot 75 or not. But I fell into that trap where I felt like people would be upset at me or mad at me if I shot 75, and that was just the wrong attitude, and it sets you up to shoot 75. And in that interview, I talked about Miss Terry telling me, be where your feet are. And I think that's kind of like the perfect way to describe what I've tried to work on, is when you think, behind you or in front of you, you can't focus on what is actually in front of you. And I think that's, the crux of what I've been trying to do for the past 6 months, especially in golf. Like, like I was saying, hitting it far and hitting it hard, like, a lot of times you hit it offline. So if you think about the shot you just hit offline, you can't hit the next one online. Yeah, Miss Terry helped me out, told me to be where my feet are, and I took that to heart.
How hard is it for you? How hard is it? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. How hard is it for you to forget, like, let's say hypothetically you have a double bogey or a bogey. How hard is it for you on the next shot to forget that? Because I've always been curious for me, when I play, I'm a terrible golfer. I would just tell you that right now. But for me, I'm like, when I'm teeing off on the next hole, I'm like, oh man, like, I'm thinking, oh, if I just would have chipped it better on this last hole, I could be, doing, like, could have had a par or a birdie. How hard is that for you to be able to, I guess, like, to what's it called? To be able to compartmentalize, okay, that was last hole, this is the next hole, and just move forward from there?
Yeah, I mean, it's super difficult. Like, I think if you asked any golfer that, they would be lying if they said they did a great job of doing that. Like, you only get 18 holes, and a double bogey is like, and the level we're playing is really hard to recover from, let alone a triple or a quad. So, which we had a couple of at the SEC tournament. But I think when you make a double like that, for us, it's a little easier to compartmentalize, because, like, I have the talent to birdie the next 6 holes. Like, and I think that's kind of, Davis Riley actually told me this. He was like, because I asked him the same question, and he was like, if I ever made a double or made a couple bogeys in a row, like, towards the end of the round, I was never worried, because I knew I was talented enough to birdie the last 7 holes. And, like, you just don't know when those 7 birdies in a row are going to come. You just have to keep playing the game in front of you. And I thought that was a really good answer. Like, and a really good perspective because, like I said earlier, like these guys are so good. If you make a double or a couple bogeys, like they can rattle off 7 in a row and they'll make it look pretty easy, even if they've been making it look hard for 12 holes or 11 holes. So I think that's kind of the way we try and think of it. But I mean, like for an average golfer or decent golfer, like if you make a double, I think you have to remember too that like the average score of a golfer is around 100. So if you're shooting anything better than 100, you're above average at golf. And I think you should just keep playing the game because weird things happen when you kind of forget what's happened in the past. And I've seen dudes make doubles and then the next hole make a hole in one. I've seen dudes hole out from the fairway. I've seen dudes make 80-foot putts. Like it happens and it could happen to you at any point in time. So I think if you can just figure out a way to put that behind you and focus on the next shot in front of you, you have a better chance.
This has been awesome. I have a couple non-golf questions for you, though. So I've played basketball with Coach Sewell in Coleman. Give me your favorite that you're able to share, your favorite story about Coach Sewell.
Oh, favorite story about Coach Sewell. All right. I don't know if he'll like this one or not, but my freshman year, we were playing at Old Waverly in Mississippi. It was like the COVID year, so it was all SEC players. I was a freshman, 18 years old, just got here, and there's a hole that's like the green is pitched from back to front, and there's a runoff, and there's a pond in front, and I hit a wedge that spun back and stayed on the hill. Put my bag like next to my ball, hit the chip, didn't like it. Tried to like throw my club at the bottom of my bag. It hit the leg of the bag and ricocheted into the pond. And I was just like, whatever, like I'll get another wedge. It's not that big of a deal. And he told someone that we need to get the wedge out of it because I might need it in the future. And poor Miss Steph, his wife, climbed into the pond and got my wedge out. And I've never seen him more upset at someone than in that moment. Like I was scared. And like he's not a scary person. He's not a mean person. Like he's never once yelled at me. But like the looks that I was getting from him were just horrific. And like I would have much rather lost that wedge, never seen it again, than to look back and see Miss Steph pulling her pants up to get into this pond to get my wedge back. So that was probably like the best story I have. He would probably hate that because he doesn't want to bring that up. But
the real question is, did you need the wedge the rest of the round, or was it pointless for her to climb it?
It was like the first round too, so like I definitely needed the wedge, but like the reward was not worth it for Miss Steph getting in the pond.
So another question I have for those who follow you on Twitter, they know the nickname is Hippopotamus. It's your Twitter header, and the Canon Claycomb tracker has it. Just what's the story behind how that nickname came to be?
Yeah, there's not really like I don't really have like an origin story for it. I just like I love animals and like I'm a bigger guy, so I saw this hippo just like kind of chilling in a lake like on TV or something. I was like, that animal is sick. Like if I could be an animal, I'd want to be a hippo. And then like a couple months later, the Cincinnati Zoo got this hippo named Fiona. And I started following them and like following her, and I was like, this animal is freaking awesome. Like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And yeah, just like I fell in love with this hippo named Fiona at the Cincinnati Zoo. So I don't know, it's kind of like a weird little bit. It was probably supposed to be a bit, and then I actually liked it a little too much and kind of bought into it. So yeah, I have some Fiona merch that I wear from time to time and keep up with her on Twitter. So I think it's a bit that probably went a little bit too far, but now I'm fully bought into it. So
we need some Canon hippo merch is what I'm saying. A little hat with a hippo.
Yeah, something like that.
So unless they have another question for you, so we had Robbie Shelton on a couple. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying you're asking the question. So
we had Robbie Shelton on a couple weeks ago. We asked him the same question. Obviously, the name of the podcast is Mulligans and Milkshakes, an ode to the tradition. Talk about that tradition. We have to know what your favorite milkshake flavor is.
Yeah, first of all, the tradition is awesome. Sewell did a great job of that. That's another bit that probably went too far and he bought into. But I'm really glad he did because that's a really cool thing. And now, like, like I was saying on Twitter and stuff, like when we win, people will send me pictures of them drinking milkshakes, like on Twitter and Instagram. Like, that's really cool. Like, because it shows you that people are following and people are like rooting for you and celebrating with you, which we want, as a team at Alabama. So that's really cool. The milkshakes thing is great. We love when we get to drink milkshakes because that means we won. So it's a good reward. And my go-to milkshake is strawberry. So anything strawberry, usually from Chick-fil-A. But yeah, strawberry milkshake.
Well, there you have it. So we really appreciate you having you on, and hopefully we can have you on in a couple weeks with another milkshake in your hand after the NCAA's.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me on. Roll Tide.
Roll
Tide,
Tide.
thank you.
Again, we want to thank Canon for doing that interview for us. I can't thank him enough. And for this to be his final season at Alabama, just wish him well. I think he said he's going to maybe the Canadian tour in the summer. So wish him the best of luck in the Canadian tour as he kind of turns pro and leaves Alabama. So yeah, that was a great interview, don't you guys think?
The pond story was phenomenal. Coach Sewell is great. I've met him, played basketball with him, interviewed him before, but that was just hilarious. I was trying to hold in my laughter on that one.
I've getting the quarterfinals like we talked about was big for match play because of how good. I mean, Ole Miss is a top 5 team, and they blew up on Friday and did not make the match play. And Auburn is considered the best golf team right now in college. They win the SEC championship, and they also won the Jerry Pate this fall match play. They may be the first team to win both of those in the same season. But I thought our guys really, really battled, not only during stroke play. There were some comments about the wind out there too in Sea Island. But they battled on Saturday morning, thought they were going to pull it out. I would think they got to have a lot of confidence going into regionals, which wherever that may be in North Carolina, Purdue, or LSU. But then, then hopefully, of course, going to the NCAA championship and making that match play event as well. But just, can't thank the guys enough as far as what they've had to, as Ken said, there have been some distractions, and I think albeit good distractions that they've had to deal with, but continue to represent the university in a first-class way, continue to continue that winning tradition that we just have as far as Alabama athletics, and very excited to watch them here the next couple of weeks as they get into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, as Christian said before the interview, and you kind of said there, we kind of went into the week thinking making the match play would be a success, would be a good step in the right direction heading into the NCAAs, considering just how strong the SEC is at the top with Auburn, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, like you mentioned, even though they didn't make the match play, and then Alabama right there, all being top 10, top 15 schools, and then you have Florida and others right there as well. And I think Cannon talked a lot about it there, kind of his mental game, how that's helped him a lot, and kind of helped this week. And they came up one putt short of maybe knocking out Auburn, who went on to win the whole tournament, and they also won the Jerry Pate earlier this year. So definitely a positive week for Alabama, and I think they can take things from this week. Obviously, they want to change several things, but the SEC is the hardest conference in the nation. A lot of the teams they played this week, especially Auburn, who obviously they lost to in the match play, are better than a lot of the teams they're going to be facing in the NCAAs. That's the case kind of across the board with a lot of sports, baseball, football specifically, but definitely in golf as well, because they had 4 teams in the top 10, I think 5 in the top 12 entering the SECs, and all those teams are obviously going to make it into the bracket as well. So I think they can definitely take a lot of positives going into the NCAAs.
And I want to say this because Cannon put out a tweet saying that the tournament was on him. Obviously he I think lost his match on the final hole. but I like Jay Sewell or Coach Sewell said, like it was a team thing. And I know those guys are hard on themselves as they should be because they're elite level athletes. And like he said, golf is such a lonely sport, but just to be able to put themselves in that position shows how much work and how much team camaraderie and chemistry that team has to be able to come together. And we kind of addressed that like we said in the interview, but I can't be more proud of this team and how they've competed, and hopefully will continue to compete in the NCAA tournament. And don't I would say, if Cannon, if you're listening to this, don't be too hard on yourself. That's all I got to say about that, because you guys have done exceptional things this season. So looking
Speaking of
sorry.
NCAA tournament, just want to say on the women's side, which may have been what you were about to get into, this time next week when we are recording, the women will be teeing off for their regional out in Washington. They got the 7 seed out there. We've said it recently how good the SEC is in men's golf. The women's golf is right there as well, with 10 teams in the top 25, and we're right there just on the outside of the top 25. It's the 18th consecutive regional that Alabama women's golf team has made. I think top 5 from each regional make it to the NCAA championship. So on paper right now, got some work to do as far as playing a little bit better than maybe some teams that are seated above you. But I know they've got to be excited to head out to Washington, and they're in a regional with Stanford, which is considered the #1 team in women's golf right now. So just, want to offer good luck to them, but also that anybody that's interested in keeping up with that, obviously you can follow the women's Twitter account, but we will try to do our part too through Twitter and different avenues of keeping everybody up to date, how they're performing out there. And hopefully they as well will roll on to an NCAA tournament championship appearance by getting where they need to be in the regional out in Washington next week.
Absolutely. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about the Zurich Classic, which I think Matthew, you have a few stories as far as covering. So we'll start with those, and then we'll get into kind of like the results and maybe some fantasy stuff that we talked about. So how was Thursday? How did you like interviewing the players and being able to be inside the ropes?
Yeah, it was really cool. So, backstory, I've known Doug Bell. He might be a guest of ours here in a couple weeks. Hopefully before the PGA Championship out at Valhalla, but known him for a couple years. I interned for CBS Sports the summer of 2021. So when it was for the SEC Media Days, so we got to interview all the players, coaches, Nick Saban, Greg Sankey, all of them. And I've kept in touch with Doug. He's from Birmingham. He's a big Alabama fan as well. And he does the on-course reporting for PGA Tour Radio. And so I reached out to him a couple months ago, and he was gracious enough to let me shadow him. So all day Thursday, I was driving around in my own golf cart around the course, watching players. I had the radio, so I was inside the ropes with him, listening to him make the calls and kind of just learning more about what he does. And then as golfers came off before Rory and Shane Lowry teed off, we were just between 18 and 9. He was calling as the leaders at the time were coming in, and then we would go right outside the scoring table and interview them. So Robert McIntyre, he is from Scotland, but he played his college golf at McNeese here in Lake Charles, where I'm the sports director for the TV station here. He was at the time the clubhouse leader. Him and Thomas Dietrich fired a 10 under in the first round, but slipped a little bit, ended up finishing tied for 8th. 8 under on Saturday. They were really good in the 4-ball, but kind of struggled a little bit in the foursome. We're only 2 under on Friday, but got to interview them, got to interview a lot of the players, Hubbard, and then when Rory and Lowry teed off, we followed them the entire time. He was calling them the entire round and got to meet them. I've been a big Rory fan my whole life. I've seen him win twice at Quail Hollow, and followed him at the 2013 PGA Championship at Pinehurst, and I've seen him play a bunch. And he is now 2-0 in tournaments where he shook my hand. So I'm going to throw that out there, Rory. If you want to fly me out for any tournaments, I'll give you my number. Just let me know. But you're now 2-0 in tournaments where you've shook my hand. I think once is a coincidence, twice is a trend. So I think we're on a good path here. Couple of years ago, I believe it was the 2015. It wasn't Sunday, but he almost hit me on the 18th hole at Quail Hollow, and he came up to me and asked if he hit me. I said no. He shook my hand and went on to go up and down. It was pretty impressive from the left side of the creek. Shook my hand then. Shook my hand. We got to talk for a little bit before his interview after he signed his scorecard. He's looking forward to the PGA at Quail Hollow next year. He's won there 3 times now. Justin Thomas has won there. Max Homa has won there. Wyndham Clark's won there. A bunch of big names have won there. So I think next year sets up to be a great PGA championship next May. But obviously that's a year or so away. But yeah, really cool day. I hadn't been to TPC Louisiana. I had the opportunity to play it last year, but it was kind of too short a notice and I couldn't get off. But really flat course. And Thursday, the conditions were picture perfect. The wind wasn't blowing at all in the morning, was blowing a little after. And I talked to our guest from 2 weeks ago, Robbie Shelton, after his round on Thursday. I believe him and Wilson Furr were 4 under. They struggled a little bit on Thursday, didn't make the cut, but they were talking about how the wind was hitting them a little bit Thursday afternoon because they were the last tee time, and how they were glad Friday morning that they were going off early because the wind was going to pick up later in the day. But yeah, the conditions played a part throughout the weekend, and Rory and Lowry were just unbelievable from the jump. The entire front 9, they were 6 under through 9, and they just kept on going. Rory, I was right next to the green. Lowry put it to the left of the green on 12, and then Rory came up and put it to a foot. And they rattled off 4 straight birdies, finished Thursday tied for the lead at 11 under when I thought they were going to get to like 12 to I thought 15 was a possibility at one point because of how well they were playing. It felt like if one of them made a par or made a bogey, the other made a birdie like 9 times out of 10, and they were just rolling and ended up winning in a playoff over Ramey and Trainer. But really a phenomenal tournament. I thought it was a really good week of golf despite not having as strong of a field. Obviously, Patrick Cantley and Xander Schauffele play, but they didn't exactly have their best week. And but yeah, I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, I think that's the 4th time Rory has played a tournament for the first time and won it that week. I mean, I don't know why I picked against him, and Charles, I guess we both picked against them, but really phenomenal week that I guess I should have seen coming, being as big of a Rory fan as I am, but props to Christian for getting the points from that.
Hey, props to me. Okay, I want to say this. At one point, I thought I was about to rack up a ton of points because I had 3 groups that were tied for the lead, and then I had another group that was like top 10, and then Davis and Hardy, they were close to like missing the cut, but obviously came back and performed well. And so I was like, I'm about to rack up some crazy amount of points. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but I do want to say this. For those of you listening to the podcast, that's 3 consecutive weeks that we have picked the winner on the PGA Tour. I know
I said it after the Masters. We know ball.
Well, I know 2 of them were Scotty, which is like,
yeah,
like it's
I mean
not
that was just an
easy father yet.
Are we starting
on,
a conspiracy theory?
Are we on a Meredith watch? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I'm wondering.
I haven't heard. He's not playing at the Byron Nelson, which we'll get into the Byron Nelson in a second. He's not playing at the Byron Nelson, which is in Texas, and he's obviously from Dallas. So I don't think so. I think we would have been told, and he probably would have posted something, but I think he's scheduled to play at the Wells Fargo, if I'm not mistaken. So it might be another thing of I get stuck with him and he goes on to win because you guys are too afraid to pick him because he might have a kid.
Yeah, but then the one time that we do pick him, then he's gonna have the kid, and then we're gonna
Yeah,
be
you're gonna pick him for
SOL.
the
So
I have the first pick for the PGA in what, right?
3 weeks.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll have the first non-Bama pick for the PGA, so it would maybe be me who gets stuck with him if should he have a child that week.
Get stuck with him.
Um, but
I'm
yeah,
sorry you get stuck with the number one player in the world.
that's
Yeah,
won 4 of his last
it's a
5
burden.
starts.
It's
Yeah.
a burden I'd be willing to take on, and if Nelly Corder was playing in the field, I think I'd take her too.
Yeah.
No, that's something interesting. So flipping around this weekend and just watching different. I haven't even watched like 5 minutes of live golf, but I did watch the women's tournament. And as soon as I turned it on, Wilson, my 4-year-old, was where's Nelly Corda, because he's over there looking at the scoreboard on the leaderboard on the side. And we've only watched her together watching the Chevron the week before. But maybe just as enamored as I was with her as far as the shot that she had on 17 and then winning it afterwards. And then we watched some of the interviews too. But even someone that young, I mean, he was, where's Nelly Corda? So good for her, as we talk about winning 5 straight and just the profile that she's continuing to bring to the LPGA with her success. We'll hopefully, we've got some women like Polly Mack and Kristen Gilliam that have played in the past 2 events. I know Kristen, I think she was tied for 32nd this weekend, but has made 2 or 3 cuts in a row, and Polly has probably done the same thing. So that's a tour that I think is going to get some shine here in the next couple of weeks, especially if Nelly keeps teeing it up and playing the way that she's been playing.
Speaking of people playing well, how about Frankie Cappan the third? He went from he shot, for those who don't know, he shot a 58 the other day in on the Corn Ferry Tour and the Veritex Bank Championship. And I'm gonna just rattle off a couple of holes here. So stick with me. Hole 9, eagle, 2 under. Hole 10, birdie. Hole 11, birdie. 12, birdie. 13, birdie. 14, birdie. 15, birdie. 16, birdie. He went from 9 to 16 with an eagle and 7 birdies. That is absurd, and that's after he went birdie, 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 birdie on 2 through 5. I mean, a big roll tide to him, and as we said after the round, he definitely deserves a milkshake for that round. A 58 on the Corn Ferry Tour, absolutely incredible.
And he had a real chance to get it to like 55 or 56.
Yeah.
And he just parred the last 2 holes. But
that was
just parred the last 2 holes.
And I think that was Thursday. I mean, Thursday.
Yes, that was Thursday.
So he's doing that, keeping up with the men's golf team that shoots an 8 under, which was the second best score of the day for Friday, and really kind of got them into the quarterfinals of the SEC. You're at Zurich, so you're keeping up with that. It was a very busy golf Thursday for Alabama related things as it goes. But that was very impressive, and that's what I was blown away with, was that he shot a 58 and had 2 pars to end it on 17 and 18. That it could have gotten even better than that.
18 being a par 5 too.
6 total pars. Everything else was a birdie or an eagle. That is just unheard of, and just very, very impressive. And hopefully we can see him playing more and maybe playing some big boy events.
Yeah, I think he finished tied for 4th for the week, and I think Davis Shore played in that Corn Ferry and had a decent showing as well. But yeah, that's it doesn't matter what level you're playing. Even as Canon said, if I can move up to the junior tees and I go shoot a 58, I'm taking it. And
Yeah,
that's
I shoot
58 on 18, not 58 on 9. So
I shoot a 58 every single time I go and play. But then
then you still have what, 10 holes left?
Yeah. 11 actually. But no, we should have asked Canon, how does your mindset change when you shoot that low of a number and then you have to go back out the next day and play again? We should have asked him that, because it has to give you some type of anxiety, because you're like, okay, this is what I just did, and I should be able to go do it again. and it feels like, yeah, I feel like you would add a lot of pressure onto yourself, and he
Yeah,
obviously ends up tied for
as we
fourth.
said in our first episode, our goal is to get on Justin Thomas so we can talk to him. Hopefully, if I'm going to say when, not if, when he comes on, we can talk about kind of the mentality of going into another round, say round 2 or round 3, or even the final round on Sunday with a lead, and especially a big lead, and kind of how your approach to it shifts. I would love to hear Scotty Scheffler's and obviously Nelly Korda their view on it, because they have to do it so often, but especially with a big lead, because like uh Scotty, when he goes into Sunday with a 4-shot lead, is it I'm gonna win this thing, just play it safe, or is it play it the way I've played the last 3 days and attack, attack, attack? And as we saw it at the RBC, finished at 19 under, and didn't have a single. He had his only single bogey of the. And here it is, the Scotty Scheffler hour, but didn't have a single bogey until the 72nd hole, in which he considered the par with all the wind. But I would love to pick their brain, kind of like you were saying, what it's like going into a round, especially the final round, with a lead, and a big lead at that, and kind of how you approach it, because he shot a 58, and I would love to know kind of how he went into Friday thinking. And obviously he didn't come out with a win, but kind of how you rebound from that, because if you come out, shoot a 58, next round you bogey the first, is it what happened and it kind of deteriorates? Or yeah, I would love to kind of hear perspective on that and kind of what it's like.
Also, it's Justin Thomas's birthday today. I just saw that on Twitter. So happy
Roll
birthday,
Tide.
JT.
Let's drink some milkshakes.
Absolutely.
So before we go into the Byron Nelson, and I have to shout out Alabama Pro Updates. John, we really appreciate you. He sent us a table that I'll pop up on the screen that has a list of all of the professional, I guess, events this week. And then the Alabama golfers that are playing in them. So this week on the PGA Tour, we obviously have the Byron Nelson, which we'll talk about in a second, but you have Bud Cauley, Nick Dunlap, Wilson Ferd, Davis Riley, and Robbie Shelton, who's a former guest on the podcast, playing this week. And then you have Dickie Pride on the championship tour, or on the Champions Tour, playing the Insperity Invitational. And then you have Charlie Nikitas on the Asher Tour, playing the GCU Classic. Hopefully that's not Grand Canyon University, because that's not a real school. And then you have the Casino
Alabama basketball practice there.
Yeah, that's true. Casino del Sol Golf Classic, which is on the Epson Tour, which is a ladies tour. And you have, and I apologize if I say these names wrong, because I'm terrible at pronunciation. The Cariba, Abe, Angelica.
Definitely got that right.
Moresco, Benedita Moresco, Emma Talley, Kinsey Wright, and then the Women's All Pro Tour, who has Kennedy Adams, like maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
So that's just kind of the rundown of the pro golf that we have going on this week. And we'll be doing that every week. And again, we really appreciate John from Bama Pro Updates to send that out to us, so that we have a kind of like a rundown for you guys to kind of maybe pay attention to, or look at. So let's get into the Byron Nelson, where Alabama has 5 golfers playing in the Byron Nelson, notably Davis Riley and Nick Dunlap, obviously, then Bud Cauley and Wilson Ferd. I can't forget Robbie as well. What are you guys' thoughts on the tournament? It's obviously not an elevated event, and the field's kind of weaker than what we've been seeing the past few weeks, leading into the Wells Fargo, which is the following week in Charlotte. What are your thoughts on the field, and just maybe some potential for the Alabama golfers to have some success there?
Yeah, I mean, Jason Day is the reigning champion. He's won there, I think twice, maybe 2 times, but it used to be held at 2 different courses. This year it's at TPC Craig Ranch. They've held it at Trinity Forest a couple times, and for years it was at Las Colinas. But KH Lee, who Christian told me to keep his name out of my mouth, because he wants him for fantasy. He's won it twice. He won it 2021, 2022 at this year's venue, TPC Craig Ranch, but the scores here are always low. For the 3 times they've played it at TPC Craig Ranch, Lee won it 25 under, but he won it by 3 strokes in 2021. 2022, he won it again at 26 under, won it by 1 stroke. And then last year, Jason Day won it at 23 under by 1 stroke. So the scores are going to be low, kind of the same as we saw this past week, but it was a team event, kind of a little different with obviously Rory and Lowry going into a playoff at 25 under. But I mean, when you're 4-ball, when you do alternate shot, it's a little easier, obviously, to score. But the scores are going to be low. It's like you mentioned there, not a great field because we're 2 weeks removed from an elevated event, the RBC Heritage, which was immediately after the Masters. So a lot of players are kind of dialing in their games before next week when we have another elevated event, no cut, at the Wells Fargo there in Charlotte at Quail Hollow. And then right after that is the PGA Championship at Valhalla. So not as strong of a field. Jordan Spieth plays in it every year. It's in Texas, so he plays it every year, but it should still be a good event. I mean, anytime you have scores that low, it's fun to watch.
My hope with some of these events where you don't have the star-studded fields is that you do get to watch a lot of golf. Like I think sometimes in these fields where you're following Scheffler, you're following the top 3 or 4 guys for that particular tournament, you get a lot of, it's not necessarily dead air, but they're just talking as the guys are walking to their shots or walking to the next tee. And so that since there's not a lot of named guys maybe necessarily in this tournament or named guys to the casual golf fan, I hope it's just we get to watch a lot of guys actually play. Thinking about YouTube golf, I think that's why that's gotten so popular in a too, is that you just watch a guy play, and you can watch if they're having their own tournament. You just watch guys play. You don't watch somebody hit a shot and then go walk for another 2-3 minutes before they hit the next shot, and you only get 2 shots in between. So that's what I'm hoping for in this in events like these that are not signature events, that are not majors, that are just a bunch of guys that are playing golf, that we get to learn about a lot of these guys and just see them play golf, not just focus on the Zalatoris, the Days, the Spieths, the Adam Scotts, and then 2 or 3 guys that just happen to play well that weekend.
Something I find interesting, because again, John sent us this, the table that you guys saw, is Trey Mullinax and Lee Hodges are, and then I think it's Davis Thompson. Is that who's Thompson?
Davis Thompson went to Georgia.
Yeah,
there's Michael Thompson, who
that's it. Yeah, I always get them too confused for whatever reason.
That's interesting, Michael, because I thought it was Michael was playing it too, and Michael's the guy I feel like really he was the first guy maybe under Sewell that got on the PGA Tour, had a little bit of success, and now we're starting to have all these Alabama golfers follow him. I can't remember what year it was for the U.S. Open when he and Webb Simpson battled it out, but he was just right there. I always like, seeing him still out there playing, because I feel like he's a guy that really helped elevate the Alabama program back to where we would want it be, as not only having good players, but competing as a team as a high level too in these tournaments.
Yeah, and as Canon said, that's why you go to Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and didn't he win 2 years ago?
Yes, but I can't remember what the tournament was.
Was it like the Century or something like that?
I
remember him winning I remember him winning a few years ago, and it was like his first top 10 in a few years. But while Matthew's looking that up, I find it quite interesting that Trey's not playing in it. Lee kind of makes sense because I think he has I think he's playing in Quail Hollow, so maybe he's trying to get ready for that. And then maybe Michael also is getting ready for Quail Hollow. I'm not sure if he has status for signature events. But Trey not playing in it was kind of intriguing to me because I feel like I'm pretty sure didn't Trey like lose his PGA Tour card and he's trying to get back. I think he's been playing a lot of Corn Ferry Tour events.
Yeah, I think he's slated to play that Corn Ferry tournament with Davis Shore, Cap'n, May 16th tournament. That's be here in a few weeks.
Yeah, and so Michael has won twice on the tour. He won the 2013 Honda Classic, and he won the 2020 3M Open.
3M, that's it. Yeah, I'm just surprised that those guys aren't playing. Maybe they have, some other, things that are, I don't know, making them not be able to play. But so talking about fantasy, last week, I'm the only one that scores points. Charles, you get negative points.
Which I thought was good in golf.
Yeah, Charles was 10 under.
So if we want to recap it, the Bama round, Davis Riley, Nick Hardy for Christian, 17 under, 28th, so he didn't get any points for that. For Charles, Robbie Shelton and Wilson Furr were unfortunately cut, as were Lee Hodges and Gary Woodland. Christian had the winner. He had Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry. They went 25 under. They won in the playoff. He got 25 points for that. And then he got more points for Taylor and Hadwin going 21 under, finishing in 10th. So he finishes with a total of 35 points. He didn't have anybody that was cut. Impressive week from him. And for me, I had Lee Hodges, Gary Woodland get cut. No negative points for Alabama golfers, so no problem there. And then the only points I got were Alex and Matt Fitzpatrick finishing in 11th. That is 5 points. It's for the top 20. And then it was negated by the Hoygaards, Nikolai and Rasmus finishing at 5 under, getting cut. That's negative 5 points. So it was canceled out. I finished with 0. And then, unfortunately, just a rough week for Charles. He's probably been dreading me getting to him. But out of his 5 golfers, 4 of them were cut. He got negative points for 3 of them. The Gala and Zalatoris going 6 under. They got cut. Horschel and Alexander going 4 under. They got cut. And Steve Stricker, Matt Kuchar going 6 under. They got cut. So that's a total of negative 15 there. And then Malnati and Knox finished just inside the top 20. They were tied for 19th at 19 under. So we got 5 points back for that. He finishes the week with negative 10. And that brings us to the overall standings. I am still in first, even with 0 points this week. I'm sitting in first at 125 points. Entering last week, Charles was in second with 75 points. Because of his negative week, he's down to 65 points. He's back down to the pimento cheese tier. He is in third. Well, Christian moved up. He got 35 points. He entered last week with 55. Phenomenal week by him. He's the only one to get points. Big week for him. He cuts my lead down to 35 points, and he has 90 in second. So those graphics will all be on your screen. It'll be easy to follow for you guys. But that brings us to this week. As we have said previous weeks, order rotates for the draft. So Charles moves up. He has the first pick for the Bama round. I have the second pick. Christian has the third, which means he gets the first non-Bama golfer. And because there are 5 golfers in the field, I have graciously agreed, since we only pick obviously 3 in the first round, since I have such a big lead, I'm 35 points up on Christian. Charles and Christian will both have a 6th golfer this week. After we all pick, it'll be, since Christian has the last pick, he will get the first pick for one of the 2 Bama golfers that are left, and then Charles will get the other Alabama golfer that is left. It'll make more sense when we get there, but they will each have 6, and since the Alabama golfers can't have negative points, and if they finish in the top 20, top 10, top 5, or win in that order, it's doubled for them. It's not a signature event, so there are no plus 5 points or plus 10 points. It's just 25 for the win, 15 for top 5, 10 for top 10, 5 for top 20. That gets doubled for the Alabama golfers, so they have a chance to maybe cut into my lead before a signature event. Without cuts, without the possibility of Charles going negative again.
So we had to do that because Matthew's been just beating our butts. I mean, heck, I get 35 more points than he does this week, and I'm still 35 points behind you.
Still
So
35 behind.
um so and then we don't even talk about Charles down in the pimento cheese land down there. So uh
Charles, your thoughts on being back into the pimento cheese tier?
What is it that Lee Corso says? When you win, say little. When you lose, say less.
Fair enough. You want to get right into it then?
yeah,
Do it.
let's go ahead. So I think
All right,
you said
Charles,
Charles
you
is
have-
first.
Yep. Charles
Yeah.
has 1-1.
Yeah, I'll go take Nick Dunlap off the board for
Yep.
my first Alabama golfer.
There you go. So Nick Dunlap off the board. That is the Alabama golfer for Charles. So Dunlap. And then I, with the second pick,
So
I
it's a
gotta go
tough one.
David. Yeah, I gotta go Davis Riley. So Davis Riley is my pick. Christian, you have Bama golfer and then the wraparound.
So Bud Cauley, and then do we want to? Let's just get this out of the way. You said I have first pick on the next Alabama golf.
the next Alabama golfer.
So I'm gonna take Robbie.
So that leaves Charles did not like that one. So you have Bud Cauley and Robbie Shelton. That leaves Charles with Wilson Furr. So you guys both have 2 Alabama golfers. And now, Christian, you have the first pick of the non-Alabama round.
Yeah,
I'm going
against Wilson Furr. I'm glad to have him on the team, but I always like having a friend of the program on the team too. So
I'll pick KH Lee.
You'll pick who?
KH Lee.
Oh, wow. That's the first one off the board, huh?
I'm not letting someone take KH Lee. That
I was looking at him in like the 4th round.
no,
I'll
you
give him
weren't.
to
No,
you.
you weren't. You
Swear
would
to
have picked him
God,
in the second round.
I would not have. I was hoping you would not pick Jordan Spieth because that is exactly who I will be taking.
I will go ahead and then snag Jason Day and Will Zalatoris.
Love it. Good
That's
picks.
stout lineup right there.
All right, so that leaves me. Let's see. Adam Scott's won it, but he hasn't won it here. I like how Siwoo Kim has been playing. I'll go Siwoo.
Let me see. Do I have 2 picks here?
Yep, you have
Okay.
2.
So let me get Tom Hoge. I think that's how you say his name. Again, apologies for pronunciation. I'm
I
terrible at it.
believe it's Hoagie. I could be wrong.
Oh, Hoagie. And then there was another one. Let me get. Why can't I find this? I had a list.
I have 3 names I'm eyeing.
Is Siwoo playing in this?
I already picked Siwoo.
Oh, you did. That's right. Taro Hatton isn't playing in it. Is Carson Young playing in it?
Carson Young. Let's see.
This is so difficult because
He is playing in it.
okay. Let me get. Yeah, let's get Carson Young.
That's an interesting pick, but interesting picks have tended to work out for you guys somehow. I have 3 names. I'm gonna pick one, hoping one of the other 2 come back to me. I'm gonna go with Sung J Im. I have Kim and Im.
Which means Adam Scott is still on the board.
He is.
I don't-
That was one of the names.
There's something that just doesn't feel right about him this week, which probably means he's going to win the tournament. So I'm going to go with Tom Kim.
That was one of the names.
I'm also going to go with to finish off my team. I like Robert McIntyre. I know you talked about him
Go Cowboys.
That's right, playing at
Go
McNeese.
Pokes.
I remember, I felt like he came onto at least he came on the scene for me watching him playing the was
The
Scottish
Ryder Cup.
Open.
Well, he played.
Ryder
Yeah,
Cup.
he finished second in the Scottish Open last year.
Yeah.
Which is how he got status for this year. And
Yeah.
then he was on the Ryder Cup team. He was the one wearing the crazy European pajamas and everything. He was the one really buying in for Team Europe. But yeah, he played here. I know a lot of people who are coaching him and playing with him. Really cool guy.
And I like that he played last week, even though it's not your typical PGA event, just, going from New Orleans over to McKinney, Texas, that you are playing, I just think he could have a good week.
So you took Tom Kim. That was the one I was really hoping for. I almost took him over Sung Jae, but I like Alex Noren. I like how he's been playing. He's a name that kind of sticks out to me, and yeah, I'll go Alex. I don't think Christian liked that one very much.
I was gonna pick him. I have to make sure this golfer is the golfer I think he is.
Are you gonna go with Minwoo? Let him cook.
I like Minwoo, but I don't think he's played that well this year. I think he started
No,
out
he
really well,
hasn't. Yeah.
and
Another one kind of similar to Nick. Young, he has a lot of time to develop, get experience, and go from there. Same with Tom Kim, but Tom Kim's been last year was phenomenal.
let me go with I'm trying to I had a name in mind. Let's see. Where was it? Oh, Keith
You want-
Mitchell.
Keith Mitchell. Yeah, he
Yeah.
played. So they were the group right in front of Rory and Lowry last week, and Joel Damon did not have his best stuff, but Keith Mitchell was phenomenal on Thursday, and he was the entire reason that the two of them were kind of in it. And sidetrack, I sent it in the group chat, posted on Twitter. How about Joel Damon's hat? What? I've never seen that before. It was like a bucket hat visor. I I got a closer look at it when he was coming off the 18th hole. It definitely looked like he was the one who cut it out. I don't think they sell that. I really wanted to interview him with Doug if Rory wasn't the next group. I really wanted to interview him literally just to ask, did he cut it out himself and what was the story there? I mean, that was just, I posted on Twitter. I can retweet it, but just a wild thing. But anyway, all that to say, I like the Keith Mitchell pick. He played really well from what I was seeing at the Zurich. So, all right. So here are the teams. Here, Charles's team. He has Nick Dunlap. He took him first overall for the Alabama round. Then he went Jason Day, Will Zalatoris, Tom Kim, and Robert McIntyre. And then he gets, as we talked about, the additional add-on Alabama golfer with Wilson Furr. For me, I have Davis Riley as my Alabama golfer, Jordan Spieth, Siwoo Kim, Sung Jae Im, and Alex Noren. And then Christian has Bud Cauley as his Bama golfer, Cage Lee, two-time champion at this course, Tom Hoagie, Carson Young, Keith Mitchell, and he got another Alabama golfer, friend of the program, in Robbie Shelton.
Charles, what do I get if I trade you Robbie for Wilson? Do I get any
Cash
we can-
considerations and future draft compensation?
No,
A player to be named later, maybe.
No, I'll roll with Wilson.
It's your son's namesake.
That's right. So as we're watching Wilson win this week, he'll enjoy that. So what's funny is he's one of Robbie's nephews is in his preschool class too. So maybe both of them will just, while they were paired
It's
up
a
last
sign.
week, just keep it going together and, be in the final round, and that'll be fun to watch. So
But yeah,
if that's something we want to do, we could consider trades in the future. If that's something like down the line, if my lead balloons up or someone falls behind, if we want to do some sort of trade, we also have to figure out the end of season event. We've had a couple ideas here and there. But all this, we talked about it in the first episode. Our goal is to have it build into something kind of similar to the FedEx Cup Championship, the Tour Championship, of whether it be Top Golf, putt, an actual round, whatever it be. Whoever wins starts out something under par and has a advantage. But
We'll
yeah,
definitely have something to get. We're playing for something, whether it's strokes at Pop Stroke in Tuscaloosa, or like you said, Top Golf, or hey,
we already know what Last has to do.
look, since we had Canon on, for any other Alabama golfers or Alabama boosters of Swinging Elephants that are listening, uh, it was nice seeing that the complex is, moving. The new golf complex is continuing to move forward. If I saw correctly, there looked like there was a 9-hole course there. Maybe
Let's do it.
that's what I'm saying. Let's get us three and maybe Jay with us for some content, and highlight the course, but also have our match based off of our picks this
Yeah,
year.
we'll just break it in.
Yeah, no
Yeah, be the first round, and then I chunk it into the driving range or something like that.
You can christen the pond on this 6th hole.
Yeah. If there's water, there's one thing about me. If there's water, I'm finding the water. There's no. That's one thing you can count on me doing, is finding the water. So.
I know, talking to some people, I think it's been overdue for that complex to be built and for them to have a facility like that. So happy for Coach Sewell, happy for Mick Potter. It looks fabulous, and can't wait for it to be open, and the tours that are done in there, that we can see it. Just the guys and girls having access to a facility like that.
You see all the guitars they have?
No.
Because their trophies, I think for the Jerry Pate they hand out, but there were guitars everywhere around, and people kept saying, "Why are there guitars?" I thought it was a golf facility.
But yeah, that again, want to thank Canon for coming on. I know I've already done that, but it really means a lot, and I really enjoy being able to highlight the golf program, which, like he said, like, there are more people that are a fan of Alabama golf than maybe, Alabama people or Alabama golf team members realize. But excited for them to get to the NCAAs. And then, this week I'm going to have the top 6, just so you guys know, in fantasy. I almost predicted it last week until everyone fell apart on the weekend. But
Bud Cauley and Robbie Shelton are the only 2 from your team making the cut.
I don't know. I don't think about. Hey, if that happens, then they're just going to win the whole thing, and they're going to go into a playoff and
double points and just obliterate us. And then Charles will have Nick Dunlap and Wilson Furr right there, and I'll be stuck with Davis Riley as my only one.
Yeah,
I'd be happy with that. If the 5 Bama golfers are the only people from our fantasy that make the cut, I'd be okay with that. I could live with it.
Yes. Well, all for some more Alabama infomercials on Sunday rounds on the Golf Network or NBC, CBS, who's ever covering it.
Alabama needs to actually, what they should do is, how they do, like when we have like the baseball games or basketball games, they have the Alabama like commercial. That's what they need to do for the golf.
I could be completely wrong here, but I think the reason we see those when we're playing, it's usually on like it's usually on like every broadcast. I think the stations are required to give them space because they're playing in it. So I could be wrong, but also they could just buy it. Like, especially when Nick and Justin were playing in the final pairing at the Amex, it would have been so cool. They tossed the break after Nick Saban's getting interviewed, and there's an Alabama golf commercial or an Alabama commercial. That would have been cool.
Yeah.
But speaking of John and Bama Pro updates, his tweet that got highlighted, good morning to Nick Dunlap and Justin Thomas, but not Sam Burns.
All right. Well, I think we're good to close it out. I don't think we missed anything this week, unless you want to talk about that Mitchell, the 15-year-old kid that we didn't talk about last week. That
I mean, I can just mention him really quickly. 15-year-old kid. He made the cut. At one point, he was 5th on the Corn Ferry Tour last week. Finished, I believe, in a tie for 20th. But we talked a little bit about it with Canon, but I think just the new age of golfers that grew up with TrackMans, grew up with teachers from when they were 5 years old, teaching them how to swing properly. I mean, I hit my 7-iron 170 yards. This kid is 15 years old and he's hitting his 7-iron like 190 yards. And it's just insane that, I mean, I've been playing golf for the most part of my life, but they grow up on TrackMans. They grow up with all these coaches and teachers teaching them the right way to play golf. And I think we're starting to see it. I mean, Nick won last week, or not last week, earlier this season. And Ludwig has just been, as Canon said, he played with them last year when he was at Texas Tech, and now he's one of the best golfers in the world. And I think just the new age, and especially at 15 years old, it's just crazy to see.
Absolutely. And I wish I was that good at golf at 15, but I don't even think I started playing golf until I was like 17 or 18. So, okay, with that, I think we're probably good to sign off. And we'll touch base next week. I'm not sure about our guests next week, but we'll figure it out and let you guys know.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, and we will talk again soon. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.